and welcome to This is USG, a video podcast by the universities at Shady Grove. 9 universities, 1 campus, great results. I'm Ann Kademian, Executive Director of the universities at Shady Grove. Throughout the pandemic, students across the country and the educational institutions that serve them faced many challenges. It's during these challenging times that leadership is often defined, and the leadership of our guest today, Dr. Melanie Perreault, has stood out. Dr. Perreault first joined Towson in 2019 as Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic and Student Affairs. In addition to her many responsibilities in that role, Dr. Perreault focused on student achievement and the programs and financial support needed for students to recover from the pandemic, on faculty innovation and development to better integrate technology in the classroom. And she took bold steps to foster greater inclusion and diversity and equity across the faculty. On February 1st of 2023, Dr. Perreault was appointed by the Chancellor of the USM, Dr. Jay Perman, to be the interim president of Towson University. And we are fortunate to have her join us today. Melanie, welcome to This is USG.
Thank you, Ann. So happy to be here.
It's great to have you. I'd like to start first with a little bit about your own leadership journey. And I know you are originally from Wisconsin. I think you've used the term you're a Wisconsinite.
That's true.
and you've talked a little bit in the past about some of your own athletic history and the relationship of athletics to your development as a leader. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about, your journey from when you were younger to leadership, and if you could reflect a little bit on the role of athletics in that process as well. I think our listeners would really love to hear more about that.
Sure. So, I went off to college with the notion of being a high school English teacher. That's what I was going to do. And I went to a small liberal arts university in Wisconsin called Lawrence University. My father was a professor there, which made it affordable. The tuition would have been out of reach otherwise, but also it's an excellent school. And it had Division III athletics, and I wanted to continue being an athlete in college. And so that was a great opportunity to, as I saw it, marry the athletic side, and clearly the academic side was going to be my future. I definitely was not looking to go pro in anything. And had I had that ambition, it would have been immediately knocked out of me for sure. But so when I went to college, and I was a good soccer player, and was a starter from the freshman year on right away. But I also joined the basketball team, and I will say I was less good at basketball. And in fact, I was probably the worst player. I know I was the worst player on the team, very likely the worst player in the entire conference. However, my teammates elected me captain. And I will say that, from my perspective, that tells you a little bit about me and about how the role that athletics played in my life, and the things that it taught me, and some of the leadership skills that I think translated over into the academic world. So when you're an athlete, you learn how to win well, you learn how to lose well, you learn how to work with a team, you face adversity, and get up and come back the next day and work harder. You learn that working hard actually does pay off, and so you can see results over time. And so all of those lessons really played into some of my decision going forward as I changed my major from English to history. I decided, I didn't want to teach high school. I really wanted to teach college. And I do think athletics had a part of that. I decided I never wanted to leave a college campus, and I wanted to figure out a way to do that. And the way to do that was to become a faculty member. And so I think it teaches you that discipline that becomes really important as you're going to graduate school, as you're spending long hours by yourself working on a dissertation. That really takes a lot of self-discipline, and it's the same self-discipline it takes to push yourself hard on to do well on an athletics team.
Yeah, I think the discipline piece is so important. But what really stands out for me is that you were elected captain.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling there's some modesty in your description of your athletic ability on the basketball team. But to be elected captain is a big deal, and really focuses on your leadership capabilities. I'm wondering how you continue to draw on that experience in your role today. I think about, the pandemic was a marathon. We'll talk more about that as well. There, really took tremendous team effort from everyone. I listen regularly to a podcast called Corporate Competitors with Don Yeager that it has people kind of reflect on their athletic experience. And I myself was a student athlete as well. And I think for a long time, I didn't consciously tap into that experience as an athlete. I think I saw it as a separate thing from what I was doing. And it wasn't until in the last maybe 5 or 6 years that I started feeling like, no, that's a really important resource. That's a really important set of experiences in my life that inform and can help, give me some tools for what I'm doing. And I wonder how your athletic experience continues to inform, your role as a provost, your role as now president. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it does help you learn to work well with a team and to be a leader of that team, right? When it comes down to it, sometimes I have to make the tough decisions and make those tough calls. But what I can do in part of my job is to lift up the entire team around me. So if there's a member of the team that's down, that's, something's going wrong in their division, that they're particularly struggling with something, part of my job is to go out, reach out to them and say, and find out, how can I help you? Because on the basketball team, you can't have your center just having a terrible day. That's going to affect the whole. You can't say, let's just ignore the fact that nobody underneath the boards is getting the boards. So what, right?
Yeah.
The whole team's going to suffer from that, right? So you have a couple of approaches. You could take the approach, which is to berate a person, and some people do that. I've never found that to be an effective strategy, not in sports and not in college administration either. So really what you want to do is get to that person and say, what are you struggling with? What's the issue? And then how can we work together to overcome it? And so it's really about problem solving. And honestly, in sports, you're constantly problem solving. You're always facing adversity with optimism. And I think that's something that I've tried to do throughout my career. And that really helped me a lot during COVID. So, you go in at halftime and you're going to give the optimistic speak. We're going to come back. We're going to do this. We're going to win, and we're going to do it together. And that's the kind of motivational speech that sometimes, of course, can be parodied and sometimes deservedly so. But it also, I do think it translates well to, look, when we were facing a pandemic that, of course, nobody prepared for. There was no lesson plan. There was no game plan. No coach sat down and drew out a play for us. We had to do it. And you have some choices. Are you going to panic? Or are you going to yell at each other when you're facing tough times? Or do you lift each other up and say, hey, we're all in this together. Let's look to see how we can solve this together. And that's what we did.
I'm going to remember that quote. You face adversity with optimism.
Absolutely.
I think that is really the definition of, a team a sports effort, that every new game, every new competition is a new opportunity
That's right.
learn and grow together. So that's terrific. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the pandemic. I want to note when you were appointed as interim president, the chancellor noted that you have been, quote, central to Towson's growth and success over the past 4 years, and more than half of your tenure has coincided with the COVID pandemic. And her leadership has not only been shaped by the experience, it has in turn shaped a university that's stronger for having navigated the crisis. That's an incredible, incredible affirmation of your leadership from Chancellor Perman. But I wonder, so congratulations. I mean, congratulations on your appointment, and congratulations on your, what you were able to bring in terms of leadership to the pandemic. But I wonder, you started comparing some of this a little bit to to the adversity of in sports and things as well. Can you talk about how you balanced things when you were, on the campus, this tremendous crisis that all campuses were dealing with, and yet you still had to be very focused on academic excellence and the well-being of all the students, and you still had to run a university.
Right.
How did you as a leader find a balance in that effort, or find a way forward, in addition to pursuing adversity with optimism, which I think is a huge part of it? But what was your strategy, or what was your approach to navigating that time?
Yeah, so when you face this kind of challenge, again, it's unprecedented, so we're all learning as we go. But as I talked to the team and I talked to everybody around here, I said, well, essentially, let's just go back to first principles, right? You have to start with first principles and work backward. So first principle, first, do no harm to the students, right? And then second, do no harm to the rest of your community. And then you start working start with those, work backward, and make sure that you, to the best of your ability, are able to sustain that academic excellence as priority one. But you can't you could talk all day long about academic excellence, but what we know that if priority one is do no harm to the students, you have to think about things other than the classroom, right? And we knew that intuitively before, but I think the pandemic really highlighted this, that understanding students' well-being, that they, that the idea of trying to study for an exam while COVID is breaking out around you, that you're maybe you didn't have the same resources as some other students. Maybe you were taking care of your little brother and sister who were at home while your parent, who wasn't able to work from home, had to go to work. Maybe that reality was affecting your academic experience. And so we really had to start and highlight that, again, starting with students first, and then also understanding, of course, that our employees were experiencing the same challenges as well. And so really going in with just ultimate empathy, trying to understand from people's perspectives what the challenges were, and then again having that flexibility, lifting up people around us, coming in with that optimism that this is tough, but we are going to get through it, and taking that approach, I think was really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a great description of the approach that you took. I think we often I've heard you use the word team, kind of thinking of your team. And we use that term a lot, I think, just in general, for organizations and things. But, it has a very special meaning, right? A team, everybody has a role to play. And I wonder how your approach to team building and your leadership might have been influenced by the pandemic. Did the pandemic shift the way you thought about the team you needed? How the work gets done at Towson? How did the pandemic influence the way you lead, or maybe the way you think about the team around you and how you build that team?
So I do think it, in terms of the team around me, I've been fortunate to have a team that I built before the pandemic, and we're all still together. So that's in the whole world of the churn that's happening staff-wise, that's a little atypical. But I do think part of that is because we really built an excellent team, and we're so supportive of each other that people wanted to stay. At least I hope that's part of the answer.
Yeah.
But I will say this, that one of the things that I recognized partway through the pandemic is that I had to do even more listening than before. And because people were going through their own challenges, and while we were working through these very difficult decisions, very much about when are we coming back? What does that look like? How do we make people feel safe? Yeah. The members of the team who are making those decisions for the campus were also simultaneously making them for themselves. They also happen to be human beings who have families and who have, fears and desires and concerns, just like anybody else. And so being able to manage through that as a leader with the team so that they could go out and really get the rest of campus to feel like they've been heard and that they have input in some of these really important decisions in a way that maybe they hadn't before. I think that was an important decision that we made on our team.
Yeah, that's great. So you're a historian.
Yes.
Started out as an English major and a historian. Why history? And how does being a historian inform some of your work and your leadership?
Yeah, so I started as the English major because I loved literature and I love reading and I love stories. And as it turns out, I took a history class for Gen Ed. This is a tried and true story, just because I had to, and so I signed up for this class. And I'll never forget going into the bookstore to pick up the book. So this is how old I am, man. That we had lists of books that we had to go to the bookstore and actually buy, and they were on the shelf.
I remember those days too.
And to purchase the books, and I remember going and got the list, and this happened to be a U.S. social history class, and we were reading books about women and working class people and Native Americans, and I never had a history class like that before. But you can do history of people who weren't kings and queens and presidents. Like, honestly, I'd never had a class like it. And so that class changed my life. And so I was, history draws you in with the narrative and the stories, just like literature does. But the difference is that these are real people, and it's sort of grounded in some detail, fact, and documentation. And so I just loved it from the moment I took that class, and so that's what changed everything for me, and then made me want to become a history professor.
That's great. That's great. Do you have a particular time period, a particular type of history that you specialize in?
Yeah, so I do 17th century Chesapeake history. So really what I'm most interested in is this early kind of contact period and some of the challenges that happen when people of different cultures first come together at the very moment when they don't speak the same language, don't understand what the other side's intentions are. How do you communicate? What do you do? How do you negotiate those very fraught relationships? So that was sort of the first entree point for me into research.
That's really interesting. What a fascinating topic to study. That, as you say, that time of fraught relationships when there's not a lot of understanding, there aren't natural bridges to communicate. And what an interesting set of knowledge and information to bring into leadership as well, because there are so many times when we're encountering situations or people or other organizations for the first time. And so I would imagine that there's some interesting lessons there as well.
Absolutely. So don't assume you understand the other person's intent. I think is the biggest language or lesson from studying history, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So what drew you to Towson? Towson's such an interesting university. It's changed and grown. It's grown in numbers, it's grown in prestige, it's grown in breadth of programming, on such a fascinating trajectory. What drew you to Towson? So
before I came here, the job I had immediately before this one, I was provost up in the SUNY system at Buffalo State. And I wasn't dramatically on the market. I just kind of looked around and saw, oh, look at that. Towson has advertised a job for a provost. And I just thought I'd look in. And when I saw the description of Towson, I was very surprised at how big it was. I remembered it being, in my head, it was a 12, maybe 13,000 student institution. And when I saw, no, it's over 20,000, I thought, well, what's going on in Towson? Let me take a look at that university. And so it struck me, so as I dug in and did some research, it struck me as a university that really was on the move and had all kinds of upside and a lot of potential. And what struck me in is that it was a university that was on the move but wasn't quite sure yet what its identity was. And so that really intrigued me. Yeah. And so as so many of these universities have moved from these state teachers colleges, which Towson University was, for many years, and then they moved into not that. The question is, okay, if not that, then what? And TU hadn't really settled on what that was. And so I thought, wow, this is a really great opportunity to go to a place that's clearly in a strong position, but maybe we can shape it and take it into a direction to where it has a clear identity. And so that's why I applied and was fortunate enough to get the job.
That's fantastic. It is very exciting. I read about as you took responsibility as interim president, you focused on continuing some of the programs that the previous president Kim Schatzel had put into place, but you also really focused on student excellence and student success as really, you can see in so much of what you've been doing, you can see that your emphasis and energy around student success, both on the financial side as well as on the support side as well. But you also focused on being data informed and really trying to bring a stronger data informed decision-making process to Towson. Talk about that a little bit. Where do you see the opportunities for greater data informed decision-making? And what are some of the things that you're trying to do at Towson to bring a stronger data informed decision-making perspective to the work of the university?
Sure. So you really can't change what you don't measure, right? And so and also there's a challenge that if you don't measure, you might accidentally change something you don't want to change, right? And so I'll give you a perfect example. When I came here, one of the statistics that Towson is very proud of is that there was no achievement gap, right? That everybody graduates at the same rate, the retention rate's the same. There's no difference by different race or Pell Grant or any other category you want to put together. Everybody graduates at the same rate. And that's highly unusual across the entire country. It's very unusual.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, I sat down and said, well, so what is it? What's the magic? Because I want to go write a book and make $1 million talking about this. And the answer was, we don't know. And I said, I can't believe we don't know. So I need you to find out, because I don't want to change something that then wrecks that. So if I change this thing accidentally, we don't want to take away something that's going really well. So we sat down and we started studying it. And so looking at the data. So when did this happen? When did the gap close? What did we do in those years? What did we introduce? And so we found some really interesting information that showed a couple of key programs and some key moments in TU history is what shut that gap. And so that kind of data helps us to understand, all right, so those things worked here. We're gonna keep doing those things, but what are some other areas where we might focus? And so one of the things I'm really absolutely committed to honing in on is the 4-year graduation rate. I think that the 4-year graduation rate is one of the key measures of your true commitment to DEIJ, to be perfectly honest with you. And so what I would like for the university to help focus on is how we might improve that number and get that number up. And I think we owe it to our students to do it, to find the little things that might be impeding them from graduating in 4 years. We don't want people to take 5 years when they can do it in 4. And so going forward, we're going to work really hard to focus on that.
That's great. That's terrific. So you said Towson had a lot of potential. It wasn't quite sure what it wanted to be yet, and had grown and done some really cool things. What is your vision for where Towson's going? How are you thinking about the future, the next 10 years maybe of Towson? How do you envision it?
So we have a strategic plan that we were able to do. We actually did it during the pandemic, and that was great fun, quite challenging, as you might imagine. We'd started it right before the pandemic, and then had to complete it within the pandemic. But where we're going is a more research-oriented university, and so we've come forward with saying that we are aiming to be an R2 university, so that's high research. But we also intend to do that without leaving behind what really is key, central to Towson's identity, which is educational excellence at the undergraduate level. So you can do both. And in fact, I absolutely believe that both feed off of each other. So as we increase that, our research profile, we'll be bringing the undergraduate education along with it. We're absolutely not going to abandon it. So So where I see us going is to increase that research activity while simultaneously focusing on how we improve that 4-year graduation rate. And to do that, right, you have to look at this kind of a rallying point for areas of excellence in the classroom. It has to do with schedule of courses. What are your offerings? Are you have enough seats? Do you have enough faculty? Right, all of those things that center around getting students to graduate within 4 years are about academic excellence. And so you're solving both things with one goal in mind, but that goal has 20 other goals underneath it, right? That you have to hit to lift it up. And so that's what we're going to do. And I think that leads to just pure excellence as a university. So that's where we're headed.
That's great. I've read about your efforts to really diversify the faculty to support a more diverse faculty through the hiring process, and to really emphasize a culture of greater inclusivity as well. This is one of the biggest challenges in academia is really the faculty, the lack of diversity across faculty, and being able to sustain a diverse faculty as well. What are some of the ways you're thinking about this, and how maybe programs you've put in place both as provost and now as interim president to try to strengthen the diversity of faculty?
So, it is a challenge everywhere, but it's one that we're not going to shy away from. We're going to tackle. And there's kind of three pieces to it. One, we have to absolutely increase the pipeline. So we have to be committed as we are creating PhD programs here at Towson. We have to be committed to recruiting a diverse class of students for our own PhD programs to help the, not only create a pipeline to maybe teach for us, but really so that you can go out into the world and increase just that general pipeline of diverse faculty. The second piece of it is recruiting to the university. And so we've taken a really aggressive stance on this. We've looked at our recruiting processes and the whole hiring process for faculty top to bottom to see how we might look at from everything how we advertise a position to what happens when somebody's first contacted and how we look at it. And so every faculty hire committee has an inclusion advocate assigned to the search. And so this is a person who's from outside of the department, and we think that's really important, who's been specially trained to come in. They know all of the, how to run a fair and equitable search. From everything, what we're seeing, some things like how you describe the position. So in my field, it's quite common that you would describe, let's do a search for a U.S. history professor studying U.S. political history from 1900 to 1915, right? You would do this really small search when what you're searching for, like the person might teach that class once every 4 years, when the bulk of their teaching is really going to be U.S. history survey courses, or something like that. So why are we doing such a tight search that isn't quite necessarily, and then makes it less likely that you're going to get a diverse candidate because you're going to have a tiny pool? Right. So things like that. How are you advertising the position? Do you really need that micro of a description, or could that be maybe in a desirable? So we look at everything like that. What are the questions that are asked? All those things. And so we've seen the inclusion advocates have had a really positive impact on our recruiting, and we are absolutely getting more diverse candidates and more diverse hires since we've shifted to that model. Then the third piece, Anne, is retention. So once if you hire diverse faculty and staff, it does no good if they leave 2 years later because they're dissatisfied with the culture that they find. And so we're working really hard on that. So we've established a mentorship program. I have a AVP whose job is to work on this diversity and inclusion specifically for faculty. And so she's doing an amazing job working on creating that culture that makes it a welcoming place where you would want to stay for 30 years as a faculty member.
Fantastic, fantastic. It'll be exciting to see how
Yeah.
these initiatives continue to build a more robust and diverse faculty. That's terrific, Melanie. I'll wrap us up by focusing on the Towson programs at USG. And I think a nice segue from where you were talking about, you need a more diverse pipeline of PhD. We also, we need more diversity in education more generally. And
Absolutely.
Towson's wonderful program here at USG is teacher education, and Towson's doing so much here in Montgomery County to to not only provide great teachers for the county, but also a much more diverse pool of teachers for the county as well. And a recent program was just stood up here. Towson just got approved so that paraprofessionals and staff can take the education they need in order to become teachers as well, which is another really important pathway here too. So I wonder if you could, to kind of close us out, if you could talk a little about the education program, which is at the heart of Towson's history here at Shady Grove, and how you see the growth opportunities here and the significance of the program here at Shady Grove for Towson's overall mission and view of the work you're doing.
Yeah, so while I said we are moving from that teacher's college to this other thing, hopefully people understand we're not giving up on our College of Education. We're extremely proud of our education program, and we are still the largest producer of undergraduate teacher educators in the state. So we're the biggest program in all of Maryland, and so we're very proud of that. And Shady Grove allows us to tap into the areas where specifically in Montgomery County, where a lot of students maybe can't come all the way up to Towson to take classes. They're busy, they have lives going on there, and so maybe just being able to pop in and take classes at Shady Grove makes the difference between whether you're going to be a teacher or not. And so we're so proud of having that opportunity to meet those students at Shady Grove. We would love to grow it, and I think that the Paraeducator program is just a really smart idea to get folks who again may not have seen themselves getting a bachelor's degree of any sort, and giving them this opportunity. They've shown that they want to be in education and that they have that ability. And so this program is going to give them a chance to do that at their pace. And I know that, this is part of something that's near and dear to your heart, is the so-called non-traditional student, right? That student swirl, the person who comes in and out. Education programs in particular have not been friendly to that type of student, because they've been very rigid. This class goes to this, and the having the internship year is often a problem for people who have to work 40 hours a week to sustain their family. And so what I'm really excited about in the state of Maryland is there are these discussions of funding that year. And I do think, there's some pilot programs going on this year. I certainly hope that program gets expanded so that TU could take advantage of it. Just putting that out there into the atmosphere, because I do think it's smart, but it needs to be broadened, and it needs to go out to people at other educational schools, and placing it at USG would be a tremendous opportunity to get those students. But we know we're going to face a huge teacher shortage crisis. It's already happening. Yeah. And we're seeing that fewer and fewer students are coming to college identifying that they want to be an education major. The numbers are really disturbing across the state. And so we do need to get a little more aggressive to show people that this is a great career. It's a viable career. There's so many great benefits to being a teacher. The old story was, well, you're going to be very low pay, and why would you go to college to do that, to have this low paid job? But I'm here to tell you that the pay has really gone up a lot in the last few years, and I think people would be quite surprised about what the starting pay is of a teacher in the state of Maryland. And so it's a rewarding, challenging job, but it's a job where you get to change people's lives. Listen, there's not many jobs like that in the world. And so we get to do it at the college level. More people in the high schools. I could tell you every teacher I had from K to 12. I could tell you their names today, but I couldn't tell you who I had English Reformation literature with my sophomore year in college. Couldn't do it. So K through 12 educators matter. They really do. And so if you want a job that matters, and it does pay well, teaching people, I just hope more people consider a career in teaching. And I think we just need to get out that message. And we're so excited to be part of Shady Grove. We think that's a great place to spread this message. And, I'd love to see these programs triple in number. So we'll see. We'll see if we can.
We want to help you do that as well, because we think that the education teaching pathway is an essential part of the future, and finding ways to pay for the internship experience, finding ways to guarantee jobs when you graduate.
I tell you what, they, I've talked to some of our majors recently, and so every last one I've talked to, they're just, not only do they have job offers, they're just trying to decide between the 3 and 4 offers they have. So it is a great career choice, and we just need to maybe change the narrative up a little bit that's out there nationwide, that people do understand it is really rewarding. It's challenging work, but wouldn't you rather do challenging work that changes lives rather than challenging work that doesn't really do much other than to make your boss happy, I suppose. This work matters.
Absolutely. So with that, facing adversity with optimism, I can see why you were chosen to be captain. And I'm so delighted to see you in this interim role as president. And it's such a privilege to work with you and the programs here at Shady Grove from Towson. So I want to thank you for all you're doing for Towson and for the system, and in partnership with Shady Grove. And thank you for taking time today to join us on This is USG.
Thanks, it was a lot of fun.